Greetings. This is Atma Bodha. The title of today's podcast is The Power of I. And this is very significant because enlightenment, when it comes down to it, is about your sense of identity or lack thereof. Now, most people, when they consider identity, a lot of people identify with the concept of ego. And what is ego? That's when you are operating from the mind. And the mind, with its misconceptions of who you are and how you're conditioned to think from a very young age. In fact, that's the challenge of life. You're born as a baby. You grow up as a child. You develop certain beliefs and understandings about yourself through your own first-person perspectives and also from your parents and your family and your friends and your school and your teachers and your classmates. And we develop a picture, an identity of who you think you are or who I think I am, who we all think we are. And this kind of hardens over time into a more fixated perspective. And the irony is that when you come from or arrive at a more enlightened place, you arrive at a place free of limitations. Now, this has been confused by some because they would think that, well, because we're not coming from an egoic place, therefore we don't have an identity anymore. But this, in my opinion, is a misunderstanding of a very real experience. Because when you remove the limitations of the concept of self, you identify with being limitless. In other words, your perceptions around you about how you interact with life, you are not coming from any kind of fixed perspective where things have a rigidity to it. Instead, you are more fluid and adaptive. And so why is that important? Well, it all comes down to the absolute. And what is the absolute? The absolute is, of course, limitless. It's formless. It's the potentiality of infinitude, basically. It's the best potential that you can realize for yourself. It's the inherent limitlessness that exists within you. So, the power of I, which is the title of today's podcast, what do we mean by that? Well, I'm sure many of you have heard of The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. But what is the power of I? Certainly, you exist in the moment, in this present moment. The question is, how deeply do you perceive yourself? Do you regard yourself only as your mind? And then once you get beyond your mind or the ego dies, I know that's a popular concept, that suddenly you don't need to have an identity anymore because you are everywhere. I know that's a conception that a lot of people have about enlightenment. They think that once you are enlightened, you no longer have an identity because you are one with the universe and the universe is you. But think about that for a second. If you are really one with the universe and the universe is you, you still exist, except you don't identify merely with your body, merely with your mind, but you don't even need an identity. You experience this beingness that exists inside of you, this unlimited, the limitless, infinite, all-powerful, unstoppable self. So, the power of I. What does that mean? That means when you unfold, when you remove these superficial layers of your identity, and it not even necessarily removing it, but you're going deeper and deeper, and you're realizing that who you thought you were is not the totality of you, but you are always something more than that. In fact, there is no concept or thought that can encapsulate the totality of you. If you are not your mind, or you're not limited to identifying with simply your mind, then what else is there, you might ask? Some people argue that everything is a product of mind, and I disagree strongly. Because actually, your true identity, your Atman within you, is located in your heart. So when you emerge, when you have this emergence of the divine within you, where does it spring forth? It springs forth in your heart. You descend from your mind into your heart. But is your heart the absolute? No, it's not. It's a mirror. It has a piece of the absolute in your heart. But for the full experience of enlightenment, it's about broadening your mind, removing the limitations of your mind, because then the crown of glory can open up and be activated, and in divine timing, by the will of the absolute, when your mind is ready, it will descend and it will give you the time of your life. When that happens, it makes every other experience in your life that's happened so far pale in comparison. I would say that, well, it's not a direct comparison, but I would say that your heart is almost like the moon, whereas the Brahman, the crown, is like the sun. But not perfectly like that, because your heart is much more than just a reflection of Brahman. It has everything that's in the absolute within your heart, like a hologram within a hologram. So that same limitlessness that's in the absolute also exists in your heart. So the power of I. That brings to another point, a very important point. People talk about balance. But when you think about it, when you are coming from an authentic place, a purely authentic place, there's no balance involved. You are either 100% who you are, or you're not. Or you're a part, you're a mixture of a corruption, or you've got some impurities. You might be tinged with some negativity. You've got some obstacles within you that you're still working through. That's normal. It's all a natural process of life. But when you reach this threshold of illumination, what happens is that, like the sun dawning, there's a shininess that happens to you, where your identity and who you are is just so incredible that you realize that everything about yourself that you thought was you before was just like the smallest part of you. The point is that you are awesome. You are more awesome than anyone has an idea about. You don't know how awesome you are. And if you don't know how awesome you are, nobody who you know knows how awesome you are. It's like a secret undercover identity that each of us has within our hearts. And when you start to unlock this power, the power of I, the power of who you are, and you start to simply be unlimited, to be this expansiveness, this limitlessness, this love, unconditional love, this inspiration of the absolute, which is bliss. When you start to feel this, and this is, people have criticized that I'm not providing an exact method to reach this place. And I'm talking about the goal or the threshold of new beginnings. It's not even the goal. It's a beginning place. Because when you are able to live your life where nothing can make you sad, nothing can bring you down, nothing can interrupt your bliss, nothing can interrupt that love that's in your heart. And you can radiate that anywhere, wherever you go. That's not balance, right? There's no, let's be half of yourself and let's be half of an insincere fake person. No. So when people talk about balance, I've got an issue with that. So it's not about balance. It's about putting both of your feet in and jumping in to be completely and deeply you. When you start to understand that enlightenment is about wholeness, it's about authenticity, it's about coming from the heart, it's about experiencing truth all the time. When you understand these things, you understand the natural place to come from, then it makes whatever method you choose to become easier and effortless. You don't feel like you're at war with yourself, like you have to win this war against your ego. No, you can befriend your ego. You can not look at your ego as a limitation, but like an injured lion that you want to remove that thorn from the paw so that the mind can be free of these limitations. And when your mind is free, then the absolute feels welcome to come down, because you're thinking, the way you are thinking is more in harmony with how the absolute thinks. So the power of I means that you can maintain a sense of identity. You can be stubborn that you are complete. There's no need to surrender to anything. I mean, what are you going to do? Surrender to yourself? If you really think about it, it doesn't make any sense. You either are yourself or you're not. By merely thinking that you can surrender to something else, that introduces a duality. It's like, what are you surrendering to? Or what are you giving up? The fact of the matter is the absolute is so amazing that there is nothing that is even possible to be given up except your limitations. Because everything that's worthwhile in your life is on redundant backup, baby. There's nothing that can be taken from you. There's nothing that you can lose. Even if you die right now, you're not dead. Yes, from a material perspective, your body dies. But that's not you. That's not the totality of you. When we identify with our physical body, then of course, death is possible. But when you understand and realize that the true identity of you is beyond all of that, then nothing can happen that can interrupt the sublime reality of who you are. So let's review this for a second. So the power of I, what does that mean? It's not about having an identity that is wrong or suboptimal. It's having a limited identity that is suboptimal. You remove those limitations and you come from that purity, that spontaneity, where anything is possible, that potentiality that you can do anything, you can accomplish anything. That resilience, that resoluteness, that is in harmony with the absolute. And there's arguments also about the concept of free will and about how is anybody truly free if the absolute pervades all. And the fact of the matter is that the traditional sense of free will is a dirty lens, so to speak, because the absolute is the ultimate freedom. There is no greater freedom than the capacity to be yourself in any and all situations, to not give anybody the power to be able to interrupt who you are, to unsettle you, to trigger you. Those are characteristics of weakness. People are so quick to blame external events and situations for their mental state. But what is that? When you do that, you are defending a weak perspective of who you are, a very superficial perspective of who you are, because the real you, the you that's deep down inside in your heart, it is pure positivity. It is love. And nobody can take that away from you. Yes, that pureness of you may need some excavation. And that is the purpose of a spiritual practice. Whatever path that you choose, it's about arriving at a place of authenticity. In fact, I would even go so far to say, is if your method that you're using, your spiritual practice, if you do not feel like it is bringing you to a more authentic place, a more genuine place where you are feeling more yourself than ever before, then I would suggest that those spiritual practices are not helpful for you at all. Spirituality is about having the freedom to be who you are. And let's even look at that word spirituality. What does that mean? Spirit, right? Spirit. You're identifying with your spirit, not your body. That's what spirituality is about. And so we've got like 3 minutes left. Less than 3 minutes. So just to summarize, the power of I. That means identity is not bad. It's only a limited identity that is a limitation, right? Break free of those limitations, and you're not coming from ego anymore. Egoic identity is all mental based. You drop from your mind into your heart, that's not ego anymore. Crown chakra opens up, you feel inspired all the time, that's not ego anymore either. That's your true identity. When you can come from a place where your crown is open and activated, you're blissed out, you feel like when you walk around outside, you feel like you are glowing with love and positivity. No matter if you're at home or you're shopping outside, and you can carry that feeling with you everywhere, guess what? You've arrived. When you can feel that love in your heart and that bliss in your mind. That's having an identity that's in harmony with the universe, that does not limit you in any way. When you're able to come from a place of completion, the Chin Mudra, when you're able to focus your mind with resoluteness, no need for surrender. It's not about balance. It's not about having one foot in your authenticity and another foot in your inauthenticity. No, wholeness is about being completely you. Wholeness is not a balance. Wholeness is a totality. And that's what's amazing about the Absolute. The Absolute is the ultimate totality. It is the best potentiality, the best version of you. And when you fully experience who you are, not only are you experiencing who you are right now, but you're experiencing the future you as well. The best version of you. It's being able to see deep through those layers that may be obscuring things and arriving at the core version of you that is pure. So this new era that has dawned for humanity is not called the era of balance. It's the era of purity. Oh, that's the alarm. Sounds like our 20 minutes is up. It's probably been longer than 20 minutes, actually. So this is Atma Bodha signing off. Until next time, peace.